Okay, this is Dick Zondag, Jung's garden doctor, outside of our garden center in Randolph on this nice sunny day in March. We're going to talk about some of the root vegetables that we sell. I guess we define the root vegetables as something that you would plant to get either produce or seed or something. So we're going to go over potatoes, onion sets, onion plants, asparagus, and then the walking onions. So with a potato is a tuber. It's not. It's a piece of stem tissue. So the potatoes that we sell are certified seed potatoes. They're grown under strict conditions, and they're not treated to not sprout. So they sprout. They're very good for eating. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but most potatoes you get in a grocery store have been treated with a chemical that keeps them from sprouting because they stay from sprouting much longer. But when you're planting seed potatoes, you've got to have a potato that's able to sprout. And you can see from this potato, this is the seed end, and you can see all around the potato there are different eyes. And so you want to cut the potato up so it has 1 or 2 eyes per piece. So we're going to cut this potato up. So we're going to cut right through the seed end, because that way we've got sprouts on this end, and then because there's an eye here, that's good for that piece, so we can cut it again like that. And then this one has 2 or 3 sets of eyes there. We look at this piece, we have eyes here, 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 and down here. So again, we can make that into 2 pieces also. So we got 4 seed potato pieces from that one potato. Now with the potatoes, what you want to do is let them sit out in a warm room or in the sun like this, because what happens is that the cut part of the potato will start growing a callus tissue over that cut surface. So if you throw it into the soil and you happen to hit a rainy, cold spell, it's not going to rot on you. Where if you'd throw this in the hole and it would be wet and cold, that because that's just a big piece of starch, it would start rotting right away. So you want to do the cutting of the potatoes about a week to 10 days before you're going to plant them. And if you go past that 10 days, what you probably should do is put the potato pieces in the refrigerator so that they stay in good shape. So again, we'll look at the potato. Here's the seed end, there's an eye, there's an eye, there's an eye, there's a latent eye there. So it looks like we'll get 4 pieces out of this one also. Now, if you want to really be sure that they callus over correctly, if you've got some lime, you can dust them with lime so that the moisture is taken up by the lime, and then you just let them sit out on that in a warm area in your kitchen or somewhere in your house, and in a week to 10 days they will be ready to plant. So if you have any questions about potatoes, info@jungseed.com. So that's the potato. We're going to go into onions now. There are several different ways you can plant onions. Now, onion sets are used mainly for green onions. You plant them thick and you thin them out for using as green onions, and then you can leave a few of them in so they mature in the fall. And the onion sets tend to make a round, flat onion, and they tend to be a little bit sharper than the sweet onions, and so they will actually store well. So what I do in my garden is I just make a furrow in the garden with a hoe, and then I just go down the garden with the bag and just dump a few in the furrow, and then I go back and I set them up so that they're in the right oriented in the right direction, and then I cover them up, and in probably 2 weeks you'll start to see the greens come up. And as I said, we have onion sets in yellow, red, and white. And you do the same thing basically with the the reds and the whites. You just make a furrow, you put them in the furrow, you just orient them correctly, and then you cover them up and away they go. Now the second way you can do onions, and these are the onions that you would plant for storing or for big onions in the fall. So these onions are grown for us in southern Texas in seed that we've provided the grower so that we get the right kind of onion. So this one happens to be a red variety called Red Torpedo. So again, you make a trench. You plant these a little bit farther apart, I would say 4 to 6 inches, and you do the same thing. You just orient them so that the roots are in the ground, and you cover them up so that basically the red part of the onion or the yellow or the white part of the onion is covered with soil, and you fertilize them with a garden fertilizer, because onions have a very poor root system, and so they grow better if you side dress them with a garden fertilizer maybe 3 or 4 times during the season, maybe 3 weeks apart. So that's what you use for growing big onions. So to review again, you plant this onion with the roots down, and you put soil up around the neck, and then you fertilize them, and you do a good job. Customer of ours brought these 2 onions in this morning. I don't know if I'd given them up. They're really beautiful onions, but he said these were a variety called Red Wing. Just must have done it just perfectly, because I don't think you'd get much more perfect onion than these. So fertilize them 3 or 4 times during the summer, because the root system is very limited, and so they need that nutrient right next to them. So this is the Egyptian walking onion. The way this grows is you plant this bulb that looks like a set in the ground, and it grows a very large stalk, and at the top of the stalk it throws out these clusters of onions, and they can be taken off as soon as they're mature and planted back, because I think they're hardy in most areas. But you can also store them dry and divide them in the spring, and each one of these little bulbs will grow another onion. And some of the Egyptian walking onions will have probably 10 or 12 of these onion set size bulbs in a year. And then you just use the onion and you plant these back, and you've got onions again. So a little different way to grow the onions. Okay, the last of the plants that we're going to talk about with the bare root vegetables is the asparagus root. And this is what an asparagus root looks like. You can see on the top the eyes, the meristem where the stalks of the asparagus come from. And the way that you plant asparagus is that you dig a trench about the depth of a shovel, about 10 inches to 12 inches deep, and then you lay the asparagus so that the roots are facing outward, sort of like an octopus. And you plant them about 12 to 15 inches apart, like that. And then you cover the tops with about 2 inches of soil. And then as the asparagus shoots grow up, you keep backfilling that trench, never covering the growing point. And by the end of the summer, the trench should be full, and the asparagus should be established. Now, the first spring, the second spring, the spring after you plant them, you determine whether you can cut the asparagus by the diameter of the stalk. If the stalk is smaller than your little finger, let it grow for another year. The diameter of the stalk is in proportion to how much the crown of the asparagus has grown. And so by doing it that way, you'll maybe get some of the stalks the second year, especially with the Mary Washington. With the hybrid Millennium and Jersey Night and the hybrid asparagus, there's a good possibility that you could get some of the stalks the first year. So this is what the roots look like, and like I said, you spread them out like octopus, and you cover them with a little bit of soil, and then as they grow, you'd keep backfilling. Got to keep the bed weeded too, because the weeds tend to take over, but you want to keep covering them up until you get the ground level. Now, asparagus like fertilizer. Because you're eating the vegetative part of the plant, you can use a high nitrogen fertilizer on asparagus, where in a regular garden you can't use a high nitrogen fertilizer because all you'd get is tops. So this is one of the plants that you can use a high nitrogen fertilizer on. Onions are kind of halfway between, and potatoes you don't want to over fertilize. So if you have any questions on growing any of these root crops, please shoot us an email at info@jungseed.com, and we'll try to get you an answer. This is Dick Zondag, Jung's garden doctor, saying have a great garden this season.